Hi there, this is Matt at State of Flux here with another dual review of, this time, The Dead Zone by Stephen King. I'm going to review both the book and the 1983 feature film, directed by Cronenberg, of all people. First, the book. This is a book that, while I was reading The Stand, I'd heard a lot of people talking about because I was talking up the aspects with which The Stand sort of captured Corona in a very natural and realistic way. My friends who'd read this said that that's nothing to how this book kind of gets right, the rise of a Trumpian-like character. And you know what? They were not wrong. I was excited to read this book, and not only is it a genuinely good book, I think this is one of his best books. And it presents you kind of a fear in an unusual sense. It's a scary book, not in actual scares that it delivers, but the scares that it inspires and how sort of madness and wrongdoing can go unnoticed, were it not for people with special shine. This story unfolds with the character of John Smith, who is put into a coma and wakes up from that coma with a unique ability. He has premonitions. He can see things as they're happening, before they're happening, and get more of the story than is laid out in front of anybody. There is a scene early on where the nurse that's working with him, he senses a house fire, and that scene is done extraordinary to tell you kind of, to open that window of what his newfound ability is, and it's pretty startling and jaw-dropping. It's one of my favorite parts of the book. But then we were introduced to this love story early on, and how that kind of got separated and reconnects, and how that unfolds in the story is neat. But there's an aspect of the book where it doesn't go straight A to B, and it really worked as a book. And this is where we're going to talk about the movie in a tiny bit. But there's multiple villains in this story. The first of which we are introduced to a pseudo-killer, a serial killer that is lurking in the background of the story through much of the middle. And he, Smith, is able to figure out the root cause of the serial killer and figure out who is doing it, taking away the whodunit aspect, because he is the only one truly able to know. And that is really kind of neat. It's also neat how that called back in Cujo. I read Cujo and reviewed that earlier this year, and I'll probably do another re-review, but it's kind of neat how that ties in together. However, it's through that act you really see what his abilities are able to accomplish. The scene with the nurse and the fire shows you what he's capable of doing, but this is showing you that he can actually do some good with this dramatic and startling tool of his. And then we shift gears, because this book really does showcase the passage of time. Even though it's not like a large amount of time, it certainly doesn't truncate it as the movie does. Again, we'll talk about the movie in a second. But we're introduced to this man who's running for presidency, and he's sort of taking the nation by storm because he's speaking real, and he's kind of making a bit of a buffoon of himself, but in a somewhat endearing way, or at least endearing to the voters, and pulling a lot of sway his way just by acting quote-unquote real. And that aspect of the story holds up insanely well, because that truly happened in 2015 and 16, and so it's kind of neat to see that done in this book way prior. But this is a good book completely compelling, and you want to know more. You want to see this character beyond this story. And it's no wonder that they turn this into a serialized TV show. There's so much you can do with this story. That said, it's a good book. One of my favorite of Stephen King's. I give it an easy 4 out of 4 stars, and I think you will enjoy it too. It's a page turner. You're going to keep wanting to turn those pages, and you'll be kind of disappointed when you get to the end of the book because there's not more of the story to move on from. But there is a pretty serviceable movie that was made in the mid-'80s by David Cronenberg, who's known for making kind of body horror films. He sort of shies away from that largely with this picture. Yet he uses his ability to pull tension, to really amplify the dramatic scenes of the film in very startling ways. Where it works a little less well is how truncated the story feels. It feels like it doesn't take place over a very large amount of time. And it's kind of weird that these stories, I think what they should have done is almost split this into 2 movies, or just focus entirely on Catch the Serial Killer, or entirely on Stop This Man Who Would Be President. And you would have made a much stronger and tighter film, but they wanted to do a more crucial adaptation, a more honest adaptation that's closer to the book. And I get that, I just don't think it necessarily works as well. This is designed to be a series in my mind, which again makes sense, TV show, which I've never seen, and maybe I will at some point. I like Anthony Michael Hall for what he's worth. But therein lies one of the issues. The other issue is, as much as I love Christopher Walken, it's really hard to kind of buy him in this role. Christopher Walken is a very good actor, a very gifted actor, but he doesn't sell me as kind of this everyman that the book paints this character as. He's got too much of an unusual quality to him, and I know that that's something that the character develops, but it just didn't feel right in this film. And even though I liked Christopher Walken in it, I think, weirdly enough, he is one of the things that hold it back from its true greatness. And this is one that I would like to see developed into a feature or miniseries via HBO Max or Netflix or something, where they can really capitalize on all the minute details of the book that were kind of lost in translation film-wise. It's a good film, one that I'd give 3 stars. I'd say it's worth your time, but nowhere near as good as the book. And I think you could draw some interesting parallels with the reality of how something like this happened in our real world, and applying them to this story as we had it back then. So there you have it. That's my thoughts on The Dead Zone. Next you'll get a interesting review from me for the Bachman books, as well as the, as of now, only film that the Bachman, or the first film of the Bachman books, with The Running Man. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.